Hello, this is an interview with Catholic Vote Political Director Joshua Mercer from episode 28 of The Stephen Herreid Show. Like and subscribe to The Stephen Herreid Show on YouTube, iTunes, and Google Play, and follow us at Catholic Vote on Facebook and Twitter. I'm your host, Stephen Herreid. And now the time has come for our weekly political discussion with Catholic Vote Political Director Josh Mercer, and we have Josh right here on the line. Josh, how are you?
Hey, things are going great.
Well, is everything going great for religious liberty?
It's been a good week for religious liberty, yes. Two developments have come up, and it's giving Catholics reasons to be happy. The first of which is, we've heard a lot of discussion over the years about the HHS mandate. President Trump came into office, and he signed some executive actions. He had the press conference with the Little Sisters of the Poor at the White House. Right. Catholic Vote President Brian Birch was there. Big celebration, but the thing is, it didn't immediately happen all at once. The reason why is because when Obama put that executive order in regarding the HHS mandate, it takes a while for that to be unwound. The Obama Justice Department, right, the Department of Justice, Health and Human Services, issued that mandate, and lots of different Catholic organizations from EWTN, the Catholic Benefits Association, Little Sisters of the Poor, they went to federal court all across the country to defend their constitutional right to religious liberty. Right. Well, Trump gets into office. He puts new people in at the Justice Department. It's not like you can flip a switch, Stephen. They got to unwind a lot of this stuff. And they can't just say, oh, never mind, we're not suing these Catholics anymore. It takes a while to make sure you unwind it properly.
Right. And people could miss it. That's why I'm pretty happy. I mean, like, people could miss good news like this because of how it unfolds. But fortunately, the people who really understand what a good week this was are the people who read The Loop from Catholic Vote and listen to our programming. These people know what's up. But well, yeah, so what is it that happened this week? The sort of culmination.
Well, what happened is, the Catholic Benefits Association, which represents like over 1,000 different healthcare providers, was still following through and trying to defend their rights in federal court. And what happened was a federal judge in Oklahoma by the name of David Russell put the kibosh on this. He put down an injunction against the HHS mandate nationwide. And so basically the HHS mandate is finally stopped dead in its tracks, which is great news. And actually, I always like to point out this. Why are judges so important? This judge that did this, Judge Russell, he was appointed by President Ronald Reagan in his first year in office.
Wow. That's
how long this guy's been in office. And he's been, he did something good for us this week, okay? But it just shows you how important these judicial nominations are. He was put in office in December 1981. And here it is, 2018, and he's standing up for our First Amendment right to religious liberty. So it's great news.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it, Josh. I mean, because you're kind of a political expert, and you have to pay attention to these things with such long-term storylines that most of us would never even notice, right? But you're like, this guy that was appointed the first year of President Reagan's time in office, and then he comes back to bite Democrats in the butt.
What I love about this, too, is that the New York Times used to run stories in the 1980s, horrified that Ronald Reagan was not only nominating people to the bench, like every president should, not only was he nominating super conservative, ultra uber conservatives, but the New York Times would say, they're all so young. And they're terrified that, he's not just picking some 70-year-old guy, he's putting someone who's maybe 35, 40 years old who could be on the bench. Russell, he's been on the bench since 1981. He's 75. So he's been able to serve for 37 years.
Right. That kind of reminds me of the reaction to Roberts under Bush and then the reaction to Gorsuch. Maybe some of the ire from the left may have come from the fact that Gorsuch, looks pretty good, like age-wise.
Well, yeah, and the point I like to make is that Gorsuch is only about 7-8 years older than I am, so it gives you an idea how long he could serve on the Supreme Court.
But he has such good hair.
Well, you'd like to think that the left could maintain some modest amount of civility, but no, there were commentators that were saying that I hope Clarence Thomas's wife feeds him fatty foods that he'll die and not be on the court for too long. The stuff that people say in politics in polite society is just terrible. But I'm very happy by the fact that the judicial nominations that Trump has made have been great. From Gorsuch, as you mentioned, lots of different people, even in the federal courts. Like, unless you're from Minnesota, have you heard of Judge Strauss? He was on the Minnesota Supreme Court. He's great. he's now on the federal bench. So there's lots of these guys. He could be someone who could be on the Supreme Court a few years down the road. So who knows? But the point I like to make to people is that if Chuck Schumer becomes the Senate Majority Leader next year and the Democrats only need 2 seats to flip, then all the judicial nominations, including a possible Supreme Court nomination, if that comes, are going to be put immediately to a screeching halt because Chuck Schumer is not going to allow any judicial nominees to be confirmed if he's the majority leader. So this is a great victory for religious liberty, but I always like to bring it back to judges because so often our federal judges act as if there's some sort of a permanent constitutional convention that can just decide whether or not we have religious liberty or we have free speech or the right to self-defense.
Oh my gosh, and under Trump it's been just like all-out war. It's amazing. They're pretty blatant about saying, we represent the left, as if they have sort of a constituency rather than a constitutional duty.
Right.
And we are going to stop anything Trump. They're so intemperate about it. Like they've lost their tempers over especially immigration, but other things as well. It's just quite a sight to behold.
Right. So, I mean, the intersection between religious liberty and, of course, the judges issue is very important. I always try to make that. But also, I want to talk about the second development of religious liberty. And that doesn't have to do as much with judges, but it has to do with the importance of the executive branch, as the President of the United States has the ability to put people in office. Obviously, we hear about people in the cabinet, like the Secretary of State and Defense and stuff like that. But there's other lower level positions that are very important still. And he nominated former Congresswoman Heather Wilson. She was a Republican Congresswoman from New Mexico. She is by no means a strong conservative. Her own words, she's a moderate.
Right.
But here's what happened. Back in the Obama administration, a member of the Air Force, a colonel, was asked if he would sign this little certificate of appreciation or something like that, recognizing somebody underneath his command, that person's same-sex spouse, as it were.
Right.
And this colonel said, you know something, that just kind of goes against my religious beliefs as a Christian. But what he did is he directed that person that was his subordinate to somebody that was above him in command and said, why don't you sign this, certificate, because you're not going to have a problem with it, whereas I have a bit of a religious issue, endorsing something like this. And he got immediately slapped down by the Obama administration. He was supposed to be promoted to being a 1-star general. They put the stop on that. And in fact, there was orders from on high, don't promote this guy. So he suffered quite a bit. And this gets to me about the topic of
by the way, I had the same thing. I mean, this is a normal married couple thing to do. When I got married, I went out to people and said, hey, I want you to congratulate me or I'll ruin your career. And what do you think of my wife? Aren't you happy for us? And we're going to have a traditional, marriage, and you have to endorse this. It's so obviously aggressive,
Well, I mean, the thing is, there's no evidence that this colonel had done any discrimination against any persons that were under his command, that he was treating people that with same-sex attraction differently or anything like that. From all accounts, he was doing his job just fine. It's just that he didn't want to sign a document, which made it seem like he thought this was a great idea. Right. And he just said, look, I'm not going to be a problem here. I'm going to try to, I'll direct you to somebody who'd be willing to go ahead and do this, which I think is a great remedy, something he probably didn't even have to do, which I think that was gracious on his part. But still, nonetheless, this is why the administrative state can be so powerful. They wanted to make a lesson of Colonel Bohannon. They wanted to make sure people got the message, don't go against anything like this. You need to play ball or your career might get hurt. And that might affect when you can retire, what your benefits are like. There, a lot of stuff like that. You've invested 20-some years into the military. You don't want to jeopardize something like that just because of, it's just a piece of paper, and he stood strong for what he believed. And Heather Wilson, as I said, she became Secretary of the Air Force. She was a veteran, so natural fit. And she just said, listen, he shouldn't have been disciplined. He was perfectly within his rights to go along and find somebody else. And, she said...
This was this week, right?
Yeah, it just happened just a few days ago. So the Secretary of the Air Force, Heather Wilson, said, we have no problem with Colonel Bohannon's actions or behavior. He did everything fine. So it was just nice to have his record cleared once and for all, that he didn't do anything wrong. So that's an important step. I mean, the thing is, that's why the First Amendment Defense Act, which is legislation on Capitol Hill, sponsored by Senator Mike Lee and others, that just says, look, if you believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, or if you're an organization like Catholic Charities that believes that marriage is between a man and a woman, the federal government is not going to discriminate against you. That's what that legislation would do.
Right.
You're not going to get punished if you're in the Air Force, if you're in the Postal Service, so working for the Social Security Administration, you would not be punished. And if the federal government decides, hey, we want to help people out with disaster relief, or we're going to help people who are victims of sex trafficking, they're not going to make an issue of, wait a minute, we can't work with Catholic Charities because they believe marriage is between a man and a woman. That's nonsense.
You know,
That's
it's funny.
why we need that First Amendment Defense Act.
With the First Amendment Defense Act, it reminds me of the debates initially over same-sex marriage in 2015, where we were saying we are worried that if this passes, it will be used to punish people with Orthodox Christian and Jewish beliefs. Right. And they said, nonsense, we're never going to hurt anybody. Well, the First Amendment Defense Act now is saying, okay, fine, you have a Obergefell, but at least we're going to make sure that you don't use it to punish people for their religious beliefs. And they're saying, no, we want to punish people.
Right,
why should this be controversial?
We know this because the ACLU is going after Catholic Charities adoption services.
Right.
You know, their ACLU is going after hospitals for abortion, but that doesn't involve marriage. But they're going after all sorts of different things. Well, why should we use this Catholic organization to help sex trafficking victims because they won't refer for abortion? Why would we want to work with Catholic Charities because they won't adopt kids to same-sex couples? So it's one thing to say the federal government should get completely out of adoption. It should get completely out of trying to help sex trafficking victims. We can have that debate. Yeah. But if we're going to have it involved, the question is, why on earth would we say we don't want Catholic organizations involved? Because the fact is, with regards to adoption or fighting sex trafficking, Catholic organizations have been involved in these fights and helping people in need for decades. Yeah. Why would you shut them out because you disagree with their opinion on marriage?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. 2 victories in 1 week. That's more than usual. That's nice. And I'm glad he got that red letter removed from him because it also took the target off of many people's backs and really actually sets us greatly at ease. You know, I know people in the military who are shaking in their boots over this stuff.
But a lot of this stuff, though, like the HHS mandate and also with what happened with Colonel Bohannon, these were changes that ultimately started from the Trump administration. And unfortunately, we do not yet have legislative, concrete fixes for these. So if the next president comes in office, he could appoint someone else in the Air Force that could say, no, this guy, it probably won't be Colonel Bohannon in this case, but it might be someone else down the road. And they won't have that protection. So that's why we really do need to have the First Amendment Defense Act. So we have legislative support for these kind of things.
Right. This is good stuff to know. And Josh, we want to keep in the loop on other stories like this. Hopefully next week we'll have 2 good triumph stories again. But how do we keep in the loop on this? Tell our viewers here. Viewers and listeners now.
Go to CatholicVote.org/loop and sign up for a free daily briefing. We just try to cover a lot of these topics. And also we keep you up to date with the saint of the day and always try to throw something fun or interesting in there. And it's a great way to start your day. So sign up for the loop at CatholicVote.org.
All right. You heard the man. All right. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Stephen. Talk to you later.
Well, thanks for checking out this interview from episode 28 of The Stephen Herreid Show. Again, you can like and subscribe to The Stephen Herreid Show on YouTube, iTunes, and Google Play. And don't miss the rest of this episode. I'm your host, Stephen Herreid.
On your mind. Oh, yeah, baby.